Welcome, everybody, to our deep dive today. We're taking a look at Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles.
Oh, this is going to be fun.
It is. We're talking, 12 books in this universe? It's amazing.
It's expansive, yeah.
Yeah, and we're not just going to, recap the plots or anything like that.
Right.
We're going deeper into, what makes these vampires tick, why are they so interesting? What are the philosophical questions? What are some of the most memorable moments? What do you think?
Well, I think what's really fascinating about Rice's vampires is that they are so complex.
Yeah.
They're not just these, bloodthirsty monsters lurking in the shadows. They're philosophical beings. They're wrestling with their own mortality, their morality, the loss of their humanity.
Right from the beginning, right? Interview with a vampire, we meet Louis, and he is...
Oh, he's tortured.
He's tortured by guilt and just, existential angst.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's searching for meaning in his very existence as a vampire.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that sets Rice's vampires apart from a lot of other vampire fiction is this constant search for meaning.
Yeah.
This questioning of their place in the world.
Like Lestat. He is
Oh, Lestat, the brat prince.
Yes, charismatic, flamboyant, but
he struggles too.
Oh, yeah.
Especially after he creates Claudia.
Oh, Claudia, that's a whole other...
Such a tragic figure. This idea of immortality, but as a child.
Right, frozen.
Frozen in time.
Frozen.
Wanting things she can never have.
And experiencing them so intensely.
Do you think Rice is making a statement there about the loss of innocence, the complexities of growing up?
Oh, for sure. I think she is. I think Claudia really embodies that kind of both the beauty and the horror of immortality.
Yeah.
The fact that she is capable of such great love, such fierce rage.
Yeah.
Her fate, kind of forces us to confront those moral dilemmas that come along with being a vampire.
And Lestat, her maker,
right,
grapples with that responsibility, right? He does, which I think adds, another layer of complexity to his already complex character.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And Rice doesn't shy away from exploring, the darker side of immortality, the whole power dynamic between a maker and their fledgling.
Oh, absolutely.
The newly turned vampire. It's fascinating, right? It's like parent-child, but with this extra layer of control and manipulation.
It is. And that power dynamic really plays out in a lot of different ways throughout the series. I mean, you see it with Lestat and Magnus, his maker.
Yeah.
In the Vampire Lestat, where Lestat kind of rebels against him, wants to seek out his own knowledge, his own power.
Shakes things up.
He does, yeah. He doesn't want to be bound by tradition.
Yeah. But even with all that Lestat, he still seems driven by a need for connection.
Yeah.
He craves attention. He seeks out companions. He even becomes a Rakar.
Yeah, he exposes himself to the world.
He does, yeah.
Which I think, that's what makes him so intriguing. He's so contradictory, right? He craves power, he yearns for love.
He wants it all.
He does. He wants to revel in this monstrous nature, but also wants redemption, it seems.
It's like he's trying to, balance that darkness with something more.
I think so.
Yeah. It's not just him, though. A lot of Rice's vampires, they experience that same tension, right? Like the monster versus this yearning for connection.
Right.
Like Marius, he's lived for centuries.
Oh, he's seen it all.
Right? Seen the rise and fall of civilizations, burdened by his immortality. But still, he seeks out companions. He mentors younger vampires.
He finds solace in beauty, in art.
He does, yeah.
Which brings us to another really interesting aspect of Rice's world, which is this whole exploration of love and loss in a life that never ends, right? Think about Marius and Pandora, his love for her over centuries.
And she pulls away?
And she does.
It's heartbreaking, really.
Yeah, to experience love so intensely, but knowing that it's always kind of overshadowed by the possibility of loss.
Yeah.
The weight of time.
And Armand, too, right? Such a complex history.
Oh, Armand.
Full of passion and betrayal.
Yeah. His story really highlights those challenges of maintaining relationships when you're immortal.
Yeah.
Time moves differently for them.
Yeah.
He longs for connection, but he's haunted by the past.
By the things he's lost.
Yeah, he's shaped by it.
It makes you wonder, can a vampire truly love the way a human can?
Right.
Or is it always going to be different?
It's a great question, and it's one that I think Rice is wrestling with throughout the series, and she doesn't give us any easy answers.
No.
She just gives us these complex characters, these intertwined relationships, and lets us draw our own conclusions.
Yeah. And speaking of intertwined relationships,
oh, here we go.
she throws in the Mayfair witches.
Oh, yes.
These powerful women with their own lineage and connection to the supernatural. And suddenly the vampire world gets even more complicated.
Well, the Mayfair witches definitely add a whole new dimension to the Vampire Chronicles.
They do.
They represent a different kind of power,
Yeah.
a different relationship to the supernatural,
Yeah.
and those moments when they clash with the vampire,
Oh, yeah.
particularly American mana.
Yeah.
It really blurs the lines between magic and vampirism.
Yeah.
It makes us question, like, what's the difference?
It's like Rice is weaving this tapestry of stories,
oh,
right?
he is.
Vampires, witches, human, the supernatural, it's all connected.
It's all part of this grand design, and it's beautiful. And to really dive deep into this grand design, we have to talk about the Talamasca.
Yeah, to Talamasca.
This secret society dedicated to studying the paranormal.
Including our vampires.
Of course, watching them from the shadows, keeping records,
Yeah.
trying to understand.
They know the truth.
They do, yeah.
It's fascinating to me that they've coexisted with vampires for so long.
Mm.
They know about them, but they don't really interfere, right? They just observe.
Makes you think about how much we can really understand about these forces that are beyond us.
It does, it does. It makes me think about knowledge itself.
Yeah.
And where do those limits lie?
And within the Talamasca, we have some pretty compelling characters.
We do, we do.
Like David Talbot, for instance.
Oh yeah, human scholar.
Forms a unique bond with Lestat.
He does.
Tries to bridge that gap between the human and the vampire world.
Yeah. I love that his perspective is all about academic curiosity.
Yeah.
Trying to make sense of it all.
Not just as a phenomenon, but as a reflection of what it means to be human.
And it reminds me of Jessie Reeves, too.
Oh, Jessie. Her journey is fascinating.
From skeptic to experiencing it firsthand.
It really changes her.
It does.
And it makes you think, right?
Yeah.
How exposure to the unknown can really challenge our beliefs.
Absolutely.
And even make us question everything we thought we knew.
And, through the Talamasca, Rice explores these big themes that keep coming up, right?
Right.
That search for knowledge.
Confronting the unknown.
The limits of what we can actually understand as humans.
And especially when you're dealing with the supernatural, right?
Yeah, yeah. And Rice's vampires, they also force us to think about good and evil in a new way.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they're not just these monsters. They're capable of cruelty, yes, but also compassion.
Right, like Lestat.
Oh, Lestat. Impulsive.
Well,
yeah, he has a code.
He does, and even Louis, who's so tortured by his existence as a vampire,
right,
still shows moments of selflessness.
Yeah, think about how he cares for Claudia.
Yeah.
Trying to protect her.
Struggling with taking a human life.
Exactly. It's not so black and white.
It really challenges that idea of vampires as purely evil.
Yeah. And that's what I think makes them so compelling.
Yeah.
Right? They make us think about those gray areas.
Those nuances.
And questioning our own judgments.
About right and wrong.
Because ultimately, they're reflecting something back at us.
Yeah.
About ourselves.
That's what good writing does, right?
It does, yeah. And even in those dark corners of this world that Rice creates, there are these glimmers of light.
Absolutely. And sometimes those glimmers come from the most unexpected places.
They do, like those ancient vampire.
Arius Pandora.
They've seen so much.
Centuries of history.
Lost beyond imagining.
And yet they still hold on to hope.
They do. They do.
A belief in beauty, in love.
Almost like they represent that enduring human spirit, even in the face of eternal darkness.
It makes you wonder.
What keeps them going?
I think their resilience is what's remarkable.
Yeah.
Right. And it speaks to this larger theme, I think, that runs through all the books.
Which is?
It's that search for meaning.
Ah, yes.
In a world that can often feel meaningless.
Especially for these immortal beings, right?
Right, like they're always searching for something.
Something to believe in.
Yeah, to hold on to.
They're not just content to exist.
Yeah.
They want to understand their purpose, why they're here.
Their place in the grand scheme of things.
And that search for meaning takes them down some pretty interesting paths.
Oh, it does.
Art, philosophy, religion.
With Lestat becoming a rock star.
I mean, come on.
Right.
He's not content to hide in the shadows.
No.
He wants to connect with the modern world.
Bold move. It is, but it reveals something, I think.
Oh, what's that?
This vulnerability beneath all that bravado.
Interesting. I like that.
I think it's in those moments of vulnerability, when the masks come off, that we see the true depth of Rice's character.
Yeah.
They're not just these figures of myth and legend.
No.
They're flawed. They're complex.
Like us.
Exactly. Grappling with the same questions we all face.
And those questions, they get even more complicated when we consider that term power sluts.
Oh, right. From Blood Canticle.
Yeah, used to describe certain women within the Talamasca.
That's a loaded term.
It is, and it makes us think about
power dynamics.
Yeah, even in organizations that are supposed to be about knowledge and understanding.
Right, it's controversial, for sure.
Yeah, but it also exposes the potential for abuse.
Manipulation.
Yeah, within any kind of hierarchy.
But it also makes us think about power and agency, especially for women in a world dominated by men.
So it's a reminder
About
that even when we strive for objectivity,
even in the pursuit of knowledge,
things can get missed.
human nature is complicated.
Yeah, and so are vampires.
They're not just creatures of the night. They have their own desires, their own
And
motivations.
moral purposes.
And that's what makes them so fascinating to explore.
Wow, it's incredible. We've talked about so much.
We have.
But it still feels like we've just scratched the surface of this whole world Rice has created.
Oh, it's a rich world.
It is. What stands out to you? Like, what's one of the most powerful moments from the books?
Oh, there are so many.
Yeah.
But one that always sticks with me is in Blackwood Farm.
Okay.
When Quinn is trying to explain death to Goblin, his spirit companion.
Oh, right.
He's like, no longer here, gone, dead, body has no life.
Wow.
No spirit in her body, body left over, body buried in the ground, her spirit is gone.
It's so simple,
It is.
but so profound.
It is.
This idea of trying to explain death to a being who doesn't even understand it,
Right. Goblin exists outside those boundaries.
it really highlights our human experience, right?
Absolutely. You have Quinn grappling with this loss.
Yeah.
The finality of death.
Yeah.
And trying to communicate that to someone who has no concept of it.
Makes you think about how Rice's vampires, even though they're immortal,
Right.
they're still confronted by death
They are.
all the time.
Lost them.
They see it, they cause it.
They mourn it in their own way.
It's like they can't escape it.
No, even in eternal life, death is this ever-present shadow.
It almost makes their desire for connection,
Right.
for me.
More poignant.
Yeah, yeah.
Makes you wonder what they're really searching for.
It's like their immortality just amplifies those questions, those needs.
Gives them all the time in the world to think about it.
To search for answers.
Which may or may not exist.
And that's where Rice's writing is so brilliant.
It is.
She doesn't give us easy answers.
No, never.
She throws these characters at us.
He's vampire.
Luring,
Sure.
terrifying,
Yeah.
and makes us look inward.
To examine our own humanity.
So as we wrap up our deep dive here,
Hmm.
what's the biggest takeaway? What's the thing that keeps people coming back to these books after all these years?
I think it's that reminder that even in a world of the supernatural,
Yeah.
of fantasy,
Yeah.
the most powerful stories are always about the human heart.
I like that.
Rice's vampires, for all their flaws and complexities,
Yeah.
they reflect us.
Yeah.
Our desires, our fears, what we long for.
They really make us confront those dark and light parts of ourselves.
That's the good stuff.
It is. It is. And to question everything.
Right. Good and evil, meaning in a world that feels so uncertain.
Well, our deep dive may be over.
Yeah.
But this world that Rice has created,
It's out there.
it's waiting to be explored.
So many stories to discover.
You might find yourself questioning your own beliefs.
Maybe you'll see those characters in a whole new light.
Or just get swept away.
Might be
The
impossible.
lines blurred between life and death.
Good and evil.
It's all there.
Waiting for you.
So until next
Back to
time,
reading.
keep those eternal questions in mind.
And don't be afraid of a little darkness.
We'll see y'all soon.